Mom, why did you bring my dead husband to my wedding? Victoria's scream echoed through the ballroom as 200 guests watched her $1,000 makeup run down her face in black rivers. The champagne glass she'd been raising for a toast hit the marble floor, exploding like a grenade of crystal and Dom Perignon across her ivory Vera Wang gown. But I didn't flinch. I stood there in my simple black dress, the one she'd said made me look like I was attending a funeral, holding the arm of a man everyone in that room believed had been cremated 3 years ago. "Hello, Veronica," Thomas said, using the name she'd buried along with her fake death certificate. "Surprised to see me?" The string quartet's violin shrieked to a stop. 200 faces turned toward us like sunflowers following the sun, their shock so complete you could hear the ice sculptures melting drop by drop onto silver platters. The 7-tier wedding cake behind Victoria seemed to lean forward, as if it too wanted a better view of her unraveling. I'll never forget how her face transformed in that moment, from the radiant bride who'd banned me from my only son's wedding to a cornered animal realizing the trap had finally sprung. Her green eyes, the ones that had fooled my Marcus for 2 years, darted between the exits like she was calculating which designer heel could carry her fastest to freedom. "Security!" she shrieked, her manicured nail pointing at me like a weapon. "This psychotic woman is ruining my wedding. She's not even invited." That's when I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Interesting how you had room for 200 guests, but not for your husband's mother. Tell me, Victoria, or should I call you Veronica? Or maybe Sarah? Which name are you using this week?" Marcus, my sweet, brilliant, trusting son, stood frozen beside his bride, his face cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, disbelief, and then something that broke my heart: recognition. Deep down, some part of him had always known something was wrong. I could see it in the way his hand slowly released her arm, the way he took an unconscious step back. "Mom?" His voice cracked like he was 13 again, asking me why his goldfish had to die. "What's happening? Who is this man?" Before I could answer, Thomas pulled out his phone and held it up, the screen showing a photograph that made Victoria's knees buckle. Their wedding photo from 2018, her in a different white dress, smiling beside the man she'd told everyone was dead. "Your new wife," Thomas announced to the room with the calm precision of a surgeon, "faked her own death, stole $40,000 from our joint accounts, and disappeared. Oh, and she left behind something else. Our 7-year-old daughter, who still asks why mommy doesn't love her anymore." The collective gasp from the wedding guests sounded like wind through a cemetery. Victoria's mother, an elegant woman in navy Chanel, sank into the nearest chair, her pearls clicking against her collarbone as her hand flew to her throat. The photographer lowered his camera like he'd just witnessed a murder instead of a marriage. That's impossible," Victoria stammered, her voice high and strangled. "This man is clearly insane. Marcus, honey, you have to believe me." But her maid of honor, Jennifer, was already backing away, her phone out, fingers flying across the screen. Within seconds, her face went white. "Oh my God," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "There's a news article. Local woman wanted for identity fraud and abandonment. Victoria, this is you." The bridesmaids in their matching dusty rose dresses scattered like petals in a storm. The groomsmen looked at Marcus with the kind of pity usually reserved for funeral attendees. The elaborate floral arrangements, white roses, and baby's breath that had cost $15,000 suddenly looked like funeral flowers, which seemed appropriate since we were witnessing the death of my son's marriage in real time. I watched Victoria's carefully constructed world crumble like wet sand, and I felt no joy, only the grim satisfaction of a mother who'd done what was necessary. She'd banned me from this wedding, told everyone I was either dead or too embarrassing to acknowledge, tried to erase me from my son's life like I was a smudge on her perfect picture. "Marcus," Victoria reached for him, her hands shaking, her elaborate updo coming undone. "Please let me explain." "Explain what?" Thomas stepped forward, and that's when I saw her truly break. "How you told him your first husband was dead, how you abandoned our daughter, or how you've been slowly transferring money from his startup accounts for the past 6 months?" The room erupted. But to understand how a mother could do this, how I could stand there and watch my son's heart shatter on what should have been his happiest day, You need to know what happened 3 months ago, the night she showed me exactly who she really was. 3 months before that wedding disaster, Marcus was still the son who called me every Sunday at 7 p.m. sharp, his voice warm with the kind of love that can't be faked. Mom, you're not going to believe the promotion. He said that particular Sunday in March, his excitement crackling through the phone like electricity. Senior Development Director, can you believe it? Your computer illiterate son, who you had to teach how to send an email, is now running an entire tech division. I was standing in my small kitchen, stirring a pot of his favorite chicken soup, the one his father used to request every time he felt under the weather. The smell of bay leaves and thyme filled the room, and for a moment, I could almost pretend David was still alive, still sitting at our worn wooden table, still proud of the son we'd raised together. I never doubted you for a second, sweetheart, I told him, and I meant it. Marcus had always been special, not in the way every mother thinks their child is special, but genuinely extraordinary. While other kids were playing video games, he was taking apart computers and rebuilding them. While his classmates were struggling with algebra, he was teaching himself coding from library books because we couldn't afford a home computer until he was 15. That's when he said it, his voice dropping to that shy tone he used when he was nervous. Mom, I want you to meet someone. Victoria arrived at my door the following Saturday like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Everything about her was polished, from her honey blonde hair that fell in perfect waves to her designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She carried a bouquet of yellow roses, my favorites, though I'd never told Marcus that particular detail. Mrs. Chen, she said, her voice like warm honey. I've heard so much about you. Marcus talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you. She hugged me before I could extend my hand for a shake, and she smelled expensive, like jasmine and something else I couldn't place. Marcus stood behind her, beaming like he'd won the lottery, his eyes tracking her every movement with an adoration that made my chest tight. Over dinner, my homemade lasagna that Marcus had requested, Victoria was perfect. She complimented my cooking with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm, asked about the family photos on the mantel, laughed at my stories about Marcus's childhood mishaps. When I brought out the embarrassing photo album, she cooed over pictures of 5-year-old Marcus in his Batman costume, missing his 2 front teeth. You raised an amazing man, Mrs. Chen, she said, placing her manicured hand over mine. The way he takes care of everyone around him, his kindness, his work ethic, that all came from you. Marcus glowed at her praise, and I felt myself warming to her. After David's death 3 years ago, I'd watched my son struggle, throwing himself into work to avoid dealing with his grief. Seeing him happy again, seeing him look at someone the way he used to look at his father when David would come home from work, it was everything I'd prayed for. But then she excused herself to take a phone call, stepping out onto my small back porch. Through the kitchen window, I watched her pace, her free hand gesturing animatedly. Her whole demeanor changed. Gone was the sweet, doting girlfriend. Her face was hard, her mouth moving rapidly, and when she turned, I caught a glimpse of something cold in her eyes that made me step back from the window. When she returned, the warmth was back like a mask sliding into place. Sorry about that, she said, waving her phone dismissively. Work emergency, you know how it is. Except Marcus had told me she worked in event planning. What kind of emergency required that level of intensity on a Saturday evening? Over the next few months, Victoria became a fixture in our lives. She attended every family gathering, remembered every birthday, brought thoughtful gifts that showed she'd been paying attention. When my ancient washing machine broke, a new one appeared the next day. An early Christmas present, she insisted, though it was only June. Marcus was completely smitten. He started sentences with Victoria thinks and ended them with Victoria says. His wardrobe transformed from comfortable hoodies to designer shirts. He traded his reliable Honda for a BMW he couldn't quite afford because Victoria says image matters in the tech world. The phone calls continued, always stepping away, always returning with that same practiced smile that I gradually realized never quite reached her eyes. Once at Marcus's birthday dinner, she left 3 times in 2 hours. When I asked if everything was all right, she laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. Just planning a surprise for Marcus, she said, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass, and I noticed she'd changed her phone case again, the third time that month. I started paying attention to the little things. How she knew details about my life I'd never shared. How she always had cash despite supposedly paying everything with cards. How she redirected every conversation about her family, her past, her life before Marcus. But my son was happy, happier than I'd seen him since before his father's death. And who was I to question that? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all actors in a play, and only Victoria knew how it would end. The engagement party was at Victoria's insistence held at the Harbor Club, a place where my annual salary wouldn't cover the deposit on the ballroom rental. "We need to make the right impression, Mrs. Chen," Victoria had said, when Marcus sheepishly explained why they couldn't use our family home like I'd hoped. Marcus's career is at a critical stage. First impressions matter in his industry. I arrived early, wearing my best dress, a simple navy blue number I'd bought for David's company dinners years ago. The moment I stepped into the marble lobby with its cascading crystal chandeliers and uniformed valets, I felt out of place. Victoria stood at the entrance in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, greeting guests like she was already royalty. "Oh, you're here," she said when she spotted me, her smile tight. "Marcus is setting up the photo display. Maybe you could help him with that." She turned back to an elegant couple before I could respond, her laugh bright and performative. "The Harrisons, so glad you could make it." The photo display was Marcus's idea, a collection of family pictures spanning his childhood. I found him in a corner room, carefully arranging frames on a draped table. My heart swelled seeing him handle a photo of himself at 6, gap-toothed and muddy from Little League, sitting on his father's shoulders. "This one's my favorite," I said, touching the frame gently. Marcus smiled, but it was distracted. "Victoria thinks we should probably focus more on recent photos. She says the childhood stuff makes me look less professional." "Professional?" "Marcus, this is your engagement party, not a board meeting." "I know, Mom, but she has a point. Some of Dad's old buddies from the factory are coming, and with my new position, I need to project a certain—" "Your father would be proud of you no matter what image you're projecting," I said, my voice sharper than intended. The muscle in Marcus's jaw tightened, a tell he'd had since childhood, when he was caught between two competing loyalties. Before he could respond, Victoria swept in, trailing perfume and purpose. "Marcus, darling, the Morgans are here. You need to come say hello." She glanced at the photo table, her nose wrinkling slightly. "Oh, honey, we talked about this. These pictures are so dated. Can we put them in the back somewhere?" "Victoria, these are my family memories." "Of course they are, sweetheart." She touched his arm, her voice softening into that honey tone. "But tonight is about our future, not the past. Let's show people who we're becoming, not where we came from." I watched my son's face struggle with that logic, saw him trying to reconcile his love for his history with his desire to please this woman. Finally he nodded, and Victoria's smile bloomed. "Your mother can handle rearranging these, can't you, Mrs. Chen? You understand." It wasn't a question. As they walked away, I heard Victoria whisper, something that made Marcus laugh, a sound that once would have warmed my heart but now felt like a door closing. The party filled with people I didn't know. Tech executives in expensive suits, Victoria's family from Connecticut, who looked at the suburban venue like they'd accidentally wandered into a discount store, and Marcus's colleagues who congregated around the open bar, already loosening their ties. I tried to blend in, making small talk with the few familiar faces. Marcus's childhood friend Derek, some neighbors, my sister Julie, who kept whispering, "Is it just me, or is this whole thing a bit much?" That's when I overheard it. I'd gone to the ladies' room, and as I was washing my hands, 2 women entered, their voices sharp with champagne and gossip. I recognized one, Jennifer, Victoria's maid of honor, but stayed quiet in my stall, suddenly invisible. "I still can't believe Marcus's background," one said. "Victoria told me his mother passed away years ago. Tragic, really." My blood went cold. Wait, I thought she said his mother was— what was it? Too ill to attend events? Jennifer's voice carried uncertainty. "No, definitely dead. She told the Harrisons the same thing at the corporate mixer last month. Said Marcus was raised by his father, who worked in manufacturing. Blue-collar family, pulled himself up by his bootstraps. whole American dream thing, makes his success even more impressive. The faucet ran. I heard the click of lipstick cases, the rustle of designer bags. That's so sad. No wonder Victoria's been so supportive. He must need someone to show him how to navigate society circles. I mean, manufacturing? Can you imagine? They left, their heels clicking away on marble, and I stood there gripping the bathroom counter, my reflection staring back at me in the gilt-framed mirror. My hands were shaking. My face had gone pale beneath the department store makeup I'd carefully applied that morning. Victoria had told people I was dead. Not just people, Marcus's colleagues, his professional network, the people who could influence his career. She'd erased me like I was an embarrassing typo in his biography. I found Marcus by the champagne fountain, Victoria's hand possessive on his arm as she introduced him to a silver-haired man in a suit that screamed money. "Marcus," I interrupted, my voice trembling. "Can I speak with you? Alone?" Victoria's smile never wavered. "Mrs. Chen, we're in the middle of an important conversation. Marcus's new mentor, Richard Blackwell, was just telling us about investment opportunities. It's about your father," I said, looking only at my son. Something in my tone made Marcus excuse himself. We stepped into a quiet alcove near the service entrance, where the smell of catered food competed with Victoria's lingering perfume. "Mom, what's wrong? You look upset." "Victoria's been telling people I'm dead?" The words hung between us like a physical thing. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like panic. Mom, that's ridiculous. Why would she?" I just heard two women in the bathroom discussing it, Jennifer and someone else. They said Victoria told the Harrisons at a mixer last month that your mother had passed away years ago. Marcus's face flushed. "You must have misheard. Victoria wouldn't—" "Marcus, I know what I heard." "Look, Mom, maybe there was a misunderstanding. Victoria sometimes simplifies things to avoid lengthy explanations. Some of these people, they ask invasive questions and maybe she just simplifies? She told them I was dead, Marcus. Dead, like your father. She erased me." "You're being dramatic." His voice had an edge I'd never heard before, and I realized with horror that it sounded like Victoria. "This party is important for my career. Can we please not make a scene?" "I'm not making a scene. I'm telling you what your fiancé—" "Enough." Marcus held up his hand, his face hardening. "I don't know what you think you heard, but Victoria has been nothing but welcoming to you. She planned this whole party, included you in everything, and this is how you repay her. With accusations." "Marcus, listen to yourself." "No, Mom, you listen. I love you, you know I do. But Victoria is going to be my wife. If you can't be happy for me, if you're going to create drama based on overheard gossip, then maybe you shouldn't be so involved in our wedding planning." The words hit me like a slap. My son, my sweet, devoted son, who'd called me every Sunday without fail, was choosing her. I could see it in his eyes, the way he'd already mentally returned to the party, to Victoria's side, to the life she was building that apparently had no room for a grocery store manager mother. "I see," I said quietly. "Mom, don't be like this." "No, Marcus, I understand perfectly." I reached up and kissed his cheek, tasting my own tears. "I love you. Remember that." I left through the service entrance, unable to face that crowd again, unable to watch Victoria's triumph. In my car, I sat in the parking lot and cried until my makeup ran and my throat was raw. That's when I noticed the newspaper in the passenger seat, left there by my sister Julie earlier that day. She'd circled an article about a fraud case, saying it reminded her of something, though she couldn't remember what. The photo showed a woman being led from a courthouse. Different hair color, different name, but something about her face made me look twice. And then I saw it, that smile that never reached her eyes. The same smile I'd been seeing for months. The woman in the photo wasn't just similar to Victoria, it was Victoria. The wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday, except it was addressed to my neighbor Carol Henderson, who'd met Marcus exactly twice in her life. I stood on my porch in my bathrobe, holding the cream-colored envelope with its elegant calligraphy, feeling the thick cardstock inside. My hands shook before I even understood why. "Oh, honey, that must be for you," Carol called from her garden. "The mailman's always mixing up our boxes." "It's addressed to you." Carol walked over, squinting at the envelope, then opened it. The honor of your presence is requested at the marriage of Victoria Grace Ashford and Marcus David Chen. She looked up, confused. Margaret, did you get yours yet? I checked my mailbox every day for a week. Bills arrived, grocery flyers, credit card offers, but no wedding invitation. Finally, I called Marcus. Hey, Mom, kind of in the middle of something. I didn't get a wedding invitation. Silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Oh, right. Victoria was going to call you about that. His voice had that rehearsed quality, like reading from a script. We've decided to keep the wedding really small, intimate, just immediate family. Immediate family. Words that should have included me. How small? Very, like 20 people max. We're trying to keep it meaningful, you know? Not this big production. Something in his tone was off, the same way his voice used to sound at 12 when lying about unfinished homework. I'd like to be there, Marcus. I'm your mother. I know, and we'll celebrate after. But the actual ceremony? Victoria has anxiety about crowds. Having too many people would stress her out. 20 people isn't a crowd. I'm one person. Mom, please don't make this difficult. I'm asking to attend my only son's wedding. His sigh was long and frustrated. This is Victoria's day. She's planned everything and I need to respect her wishes. Can you please just support us? Victoria's day, not their day, hers. I hung up before he could hear me cry. 2 weeks later, my sister Julie called, her voice tight with fury. Please tell me you've seen Victoria's Instagram. I barely used social media, but I opened the app and found Victoria's public profile. Wedding photos everywhere, dress fittings, flower arrangements, cake tastings. Then I found the one that stopped my heart. A seating chart. Ivory place cards arranged in careful rows. I zoomed in, counting table 1, table 5, table 10, table 15, 200 names. Victoria's extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles I'd never heard mentioned. Marcus's colleagues, his college roommates, his childhood friend Derek who'd moved to Seattle 5 years ago. Carol Henderson's name was right there in elegant script, but not mine. The caption read, "Finalizing our intimate gathering, can't wait to celebrate with our nearest and dearest." Someone had commented, "Intimate? Girl, this is huge." Victoria replied, "When you have so many people you love, intimate becomes relative." I called Marcus 5 times before he answered, his voice sharp. "Mom, I'm at work." 200 people, Marcus. I saw the seating chart. 200 people at your intimate wedding, but not your mother. Mom, Carol Henderson is invited, my neighbor, but I'm not. The guest list just expanded. Expanded? Or was I never invited in the first place? This isn't about you. You're my only child. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Don't. His voice turned to ice. Don't bring Dad into this. He hung up. At midnight, headlights swept across my living room window. Marcus's BMW pulled into my driveway. I watched him sit there for a long moment, head resting against the steering wheel, before finally getting out. I opened the door before he could knock. His eyes were red, his tie loosened, and he looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with work. We sat in the living room where I'd rocked him as a baby, where David had taught him to tie his shoes, where we'd celebrated every milestone of his life. "I'm sorry about the guest list," he said finally. "I should have told you it got bigger." "Why am I not invited, Marcus? Please just tell me the truth." He rubbed his face, and I saw the answer before he spoke. "Victoria thinks you don't approve of her, that you're judging her. She doesn't want that energy at the wedding." I've never said one negative word. "You don't have to say it, Mom. She can feel it. The way you look at her, the questions you ask. Is she good enough for you?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Marcus stood abruptly. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You've decided you don't like her, and nothing will change your mind." "Marcus, please listen. There's something wrong." "No, Mom, you listen." He turned to face me, his eyes holding a hardness that made him look like a stranger. "Victoria is going to be my wife, my family, and if you can't accept that, then maybe we need distance." "Distance? I can't keep being pulled between you two. It's exhausting. I love you, Mom. You're my mother, but I love her too." He paused, and the next words came out like bullets. "And I choose her." The silence that followed felt like drowning. You choose her, I repeated. She's my future. And if you can't be part of that future without causing problems, he trailed off, but the implication crushed me anyway. Then I don't get to be part of it at all. He didn't deny it, just stood there looking miserable but resolved, like he'd rehearsed this speech. I should go. Victoria's waiting. At the door, I stopped him one last time. Marcus, I love you. No matter what, I love you. He nodded but didn't say it back. Just got in his BMW and drove away, leaving me standing in my doorway at midnight, watching his taillights disappear. Inside, I made tea. I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the newspaper article my sister had given me weeks ago, the one with a photo of a woman being led from a courthouse for fraud. A woman with Victoria's face and a different name. It was time to find out exactly who my son was marrying. The box labeled David's office had been sitting untouched in my garage for 3 years because I wasn't ready to face my husband's handwriting on file folders he'd never open again. But grief makes you do strange things at 2 a.m. when your son has just chosen his fiancée over you. I pulled the box down from the metal shelf, dust coating my fingers, the cardboard soft with age and moisture. Inside, I found his reading glasses folded carefully on top, his favorite pen still clipped to a notebook, and underneath, files organized with the meticulous care that had made him such a good accountant. Tax returns, insurance documents, receipts sorted by year. David had kept everything. Then I found the newspaper clippings. He'd always cut out articles that interested him. Local crime stories, financial fraud cases, anything involving numbers and deception. Know thy enemy, he used to joke, though he'd never had an enemy in his life. The clipping was from the Boston Herald, dated April 2018. The paper had yellowed, the edges brittle, but the headline was still clear. Event planner charged with embezzlement, $75,000 stolen from wedding clients. The photo showed a woman in handcuffs being escorted from a courthouse, her face turned partially away from the camera. Dark hair instead of blonde. Different makeup. But the bone structure, the way she held her chin up despite the circumstances. My hand started trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I held the clipping up to the lamp, studying every pixel of that grainy newsprint photo. The woman's name was listed as Veronica Blackwell, age 28. But I would have bet my house, my car, everything I owned that Veronica Blackwell and Victoria Ashford were the same person. I grabbed my laptop and typed the name into Google with shaking fingers. The results loaded slowly, my internet crawling like it knew I needed this information immediately. Article after article appeared. Veronica Blackwell had run a high-end event planning business in Boston, specializing in luxury weddings. She'd taken deposits from 17 couples, promised them dream weddings, and disappeared with their money. Some couples lost their entire savings. I scrolled further and found her booking photo, face forward this time, no hiding. The dark hair was different and she looked younger, harder somehow. But those eyes were unmistakable. That same calculating coldness I'd glimpsed when she thought no one was watching. One article mentioned that Veronica had fled before trial, skipping bail, and a warrant was still active for her arrest. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I kept searching, going deeper into the rabbit hole. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, looking for any trace of Veronica Blackwell's life before she became Victoria Ashford. Then I found it. A wedding announcement from 2016 in a small Connecticut newspaper. Veronica Louise Hartley weds Thomas Michael Salgado at St. Catherine's Church. The photo showed a beaming bride in white, unmistakably the woman my son was about to marry, next to a kind-faced man with dark hair and a genuine smile. But Victoria had told Marcus she'd never been married, that she was a widow. No, wait. She'd said her previous boyfriend had died in a car accident. The story shifted depending on who was asking. I searched for Thomas Michael Salgado, my fingers flying across the keyboard. His Facebook profile appeared, privacy settings loose enough that I could see his basic information and photos. Status, divorced. Location, Hartford, Connecticut. Occupation, high school teacher, very much alive. The most recent photo was from 2 weeks ago. Him at a school baseball game, coaching kids in the dugout. The caption read, "Another great season with these amazing kids. Coach life thrust, blessed." I sat back, my mind racing. Victoria had told people her previous partner was dead, but here was Thomas Salgado alive and well, coaching baseball in Connecticut. I clicked on his profile again and noticed we had a mutual friend, my cousin Linda, who lived in Hartford. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was crazy. I was internet stalking my son's fiancée like some conspiracy theorist. But then I remembered Marcus's face when he said, "I choose her." I remembered 200 wedding invitations that didn't include his mother. I remembered Victoria's cold eyes when she thought no one was watching. I clicked the message button and started typing. "Mr. Salgado, you don't know me, but I believe you were once married to a woman named Veronica. She's now going by Victoria Ashford and is engaged to my son. I need to talk to you urgently. Please call me." I typed my phone number, stared at the message for a full minute, then hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The message showed as delivered immediately, then seen 30 seconds later. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m. just as weak sunlight was starting to filter through my kitchen window. Unknown number, Connecticut area code. I answered on the first ring. "Is this Margaret?" The voice was male, tired, careful. "You messaged me about Veronica." "Yes," I said, gripping the phone. "Victoria Ashford. She's marrying my son in 2 weeks." A long pause, then, "No, she's not. She's already married. To me, we never divorced." The world tilted sideways. "She told my son you were dead." Thomas let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, that sounds like her. Look, Mrs. Chen, if your son is involved with Veronica or Victoria or whatever she's calling herself now, you need to stop that wedding. Because I know exactly what she's capable of, and it's worse than you think." Thomas Salgado sat across from me at the corner table of a Hartford diner, stirring coffee he wouldn't drink, and the first thing he said was, "She left our daughter at a fire station like unwanted luggage." I'd driven 2 hours to meet this stranger, and those words hit me harder than anything I'd prepared myself for. "Your daughter?" "Emma. She's 7 now." His hand shook slightly as he pulled out his phone, showing me a photo of a little girl with dark curls and Victoria's green eyes. Victoria, disappeared when Emma was 6 months old. Gone one morning with our savings, my grandfather's wedding ring, and the cash from our joint account. Left a note saying motherhood wasn't for her. The diner smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. A waitress refilled mugs we weren't drinking. Outside, morning traffic crawled past on rain-slicked streets. "I searched for months," Thomas continued, his voice hollow with old pain. "Filed missing person reports, hired a private investigator I couldn't afford. Then the fraud charges came out, the wedding planning business, the embezzlement. By then she'd vanished completely. Changed her name, her appearance, her entire identity." He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were documents that made my stomach turn. Bank statements showing systematic theft, court records from the embezzlement case, a warrant for Veronica Blackwell's arrest still active in Massachusetts. "She's a ghost," Thomas said. "She becomes whoever she needs to be to get what she wants. With me, she was the perfect wife. Sweet, supportive, talked about having a big family. The whole time, she was stealing from our accounts, forging my signature on loans, maxing out credit cards in my name." "How did you not notice?" "I was a 24-year-old teacher, working 2 jobs to support us while she built her business. I trusted her completely." His laugh was bitter. "She told me she was handling our finances because I was too busy. By the time I realized what was happening, she'd destroyed my credit, emptied our savings, and disappeared. I thought of Marcus, brilliant with computers but naive about people, letting Victoria handle their shared expenses because she said she was better with money." "What happened to your daughter?" Thomas's jaw tightened. "A firefighter found her in a car seat outside Station 12 in Boston, 6 months old, wearing a onesie with a note pinned to her blanket. I can't do this anymore. Her father is Thomas Salgado." No apology, no explanation, just abandonment. The casual cruelty of it made me feel sick. She left a baby at a fire station. She left her daughter like she was returning a library book. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. He blinked away quickly. "Emma asks about her sometimes, wants to know why her mommy didn't love her. What am I supposed to say?" I reached across the table and squeezed his hand, this stranger bound to me by a woman who destroyed both our families. "There's more," Thomas said, pulling out another folder, this one thicker. After you contacted me, I did some digging. Called in a favor from a buddy who works in financial investigation. What I found? He paused, sliding papers across the table. Your son is in serious danger. The documents showed bank transfers, investment portfolio changes, and legal papers I had to read 3 times to understand. Victoria got Marcus to add her to his investment account 6 months ago, right? I nodded, remembering Marcus mentioning it casually, just planning for their future together. She's been systematically moving money, small amounts at first, nothing he'd notice. But look at this. Thomas pointed to a highlighted section. She transferred shares from his tech startup to an LLC registered in Delaware. The company's owned by a shell corporation, but if you trace it back, he flipped to another page. It leads to an account under the name Sarah Mitchell. Want to guess who Sarah Mitchell is? My blood ran cold. Another identity. Bingo. She's been planning this for months. The wedding, the romance, all of it. It's a long con to steal your son's company shares. Those shares are worth what? $500,000? More? Marcus's startup just got a second round of funding, I whispered. The shares are valued at $1.2 million. Thomas sat back, vindicated but not happy about it. She's done this before. Not at this scale, but the pattern's the same. Find a successful man, become indispensable, get access to finances, then disappear. The wedding is probably her exit strategy. Get married, wait a few months, file for divorce, take half of everything in the settlement. Or worse, I said, my mind racing. Stay married long enough to really clean him out, then fake her death and vanish. She's done it before. We sat in silence, the weight of Victoria's deception settling over us like fog. We have to stop this wedding, Thomas said finally. He won't listen to me. He's chosen her over everything. Then we don't convince him. We show him. Thomas gathered the documents, his teacher's hands organizing them efficiently. We show up at that wedding with evidence he can't deny. Bank records, court documents, Emma's birth certificate listing Veronica Blackwell as her mother. She'll run, I said. The minute she sees you, she'll disappear again. Good. Let her run, as long as she runs away from your son instead of with his money. I thought of Marcus's face the last time I saw him, hardened against me, convinced I was the problem. Showing up at his wedding with Victoria's abandoned husband would either save him or destroy our relationship forever. There's one more thing, Thomas said quietly. Emma, she deserves to meet her mother, even if it's just to understand that her mother's rejection wasn't her fault, that Veronica is the broken one, not her. The idea of using a 7-year-old child as evidence made me feel sick, but then I thought of all the other victims. The 17 couples whose weddings Victoria had destroyed, the life she'd stolen from Thomas, the future she was planning to steal from Marcus. Okay, I said, we do it together. Thomas extended his hand across the table, and I shook it, sealing an alliance born from shared betrayal. One question, I said. Why didn't you come forward sooner, when you found out she was engaged to my son? His smile was sad. I've been looking for her for 7 years, Mrs. Chen. I only found out where she was when you contacted me. She's that good at disappearing. We left the diner with a plan, 2 folders full of damning evidence, and 10 days until a wedding that was never going to happen. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Mom, please respect our boundaries. Don't contact me again until you can be happy for us. I stared at those words at a red light, then texted back, I love you. I'll always protect you, even when you hate me for it. The real question now wasn't whether to crash the wedding. It was whether Marcus would forgive me when he learned the truth. We arrived during the best man speech, and the champagne glass slipped from Victoria's fingers before she even saw Emma standing behind us. The Grandview Hotel ballroom was exactly what I'd imagined from Victoria's Instagram. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, white roses everywhere, 200 guests in designer clothes laughing at rehearsed jokes. Marcus stood beside his bride at the head table, his tuxedo perfectly tailored, his smile genuine in a way that broke my heart. Then Victoria's eyes found mine across the crowd. I watched the color drain from her face like time-lapse photography. The champagne flute hit marble with a crystalline explosion, golden liquid spreading across her ivory Vera Wang like a stain she'd never wash out. The best man's microphone feedback screeched. Conversations died mid-sentence. The string quartet's violin scraped to silence. Margaret? Marcus stood, his confusion absolute. What are you? But Victoria couldn't look away from Thomas, standing beside me in his simple suit, holding Emma's small hand. Her mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out, like she'd forgotten how to form words. "Hello, Victoria," Thomas said, his voice carrying across the ballroom with devastating calm. "Or should I still call you Veronica?" The gasp that rippled through 200 guests sounded like wind before a storm. Victoria's maid of honor, Jennifer, stepped forward, phone already raised. "This is a private event." "I'm family," I said clearly. "I'm Marcus's mother," though apparently that wasn't enough to warrant an invitation to my only son's wedding. Murmurs erupted. I saw faces turning toward each other, whispered questions spreading like wildfire. Marcus's colleague from the tech firm looked confused. Carol Henderson, my neighbor who'd somehow made the guest list, was filming on her phone. "Mom, how did you—" Marcus moved toward me, his face cycling through shock and something else. Shame. "What's going on?" "Security!" Victoria's voice cracked like a whip, suddenly finding power. "Remove these people immediately." "Before you do," Thomas said, stepping forward with the quiet authority of a high school teacher who'd handled worse disruptions, "you might want to explain to your new husband why you told him your first husband was dead." The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear ice melting in champagne buckets. "Because I'm very much alive," Thomas continued, "as you can see." Victoria's mother, the elegant woman in navy who'd looked through me at the engagement party, gripped the table edge, her face going pale. "Victoria, who is this man?" "That's not— You don't understand." Victoria's honey-smooth voice had turned desperate, sharp-edged. Her eyes darted between exits like a trapped animal calculating escape routes. Marcus stepped between us, his face flushed. "I don't know who you are, but this is insane. My mother is clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Your wife," Thomas said, pulling documents from his jacket, "has a habit of reinventing herself. New name, new story, new victim." He held up papers, bank statements, court records, the arrest warrant still active in Massachusetts. "Isn't that right, Veronica Blackwell?" Marcus grabbed the documents, his hands shaking. I watched his eyes scan the pages, saw the moment his world began fracturing. Bank transfers he'd never authorized, investment accounts emptied, shares transferred to shell companies. "These are fake," Victoria said, but her voice wavered. "Marcus, honey, this is clearly some elaborate—" "The account numbers are mine," Marcus whispered, his face going white. "These are my accounts." Victoria's bridesmaids were backing away, their champagne forgotten. The photographer had lowered his camera. Guests were filming everything now, phones raised like witnesses documenting a crime. "You're lying," Victoria's voice rose, losing its careful polish. "All of you are lying." That's when Emma stepped forward. 7 years old in a simple blue dress, dark curls framing Victoria's green eyes, she looked up at the woman who'd abandoned her at a fire station and asked in a voice that carried across the silent ballroom, "Mommy, why did you leave us?" The word mommy landed like a grenade. Victoria stumbled backward, her heel catching on her train. Marcus caught her automatically, but his hands released her just as quickly, like he'd touched something poisonous. I've never— Victoria looked at Emma, and for one terrible second I saw recognition flash across her face before she could hide it. "I don't know this child." "Yes, you do," Emma said, and her small voice held more strength than Victoria's entire performance. She pulled out a photograph, creased and worn from handling, showing Victoria in a hospital bed, younger and exhausted, holding a newborn. "Daddy says you left me because you didn't love me, but I brought your picture anyway in case you came back." The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. Marcus looked at the photo, then at Emma, then at Victoria. "You have a daughter?" Victoria's carefully constructed mask finally cracked, and what emerged underneath was something cold and vicious. "That child is not mine. This is a setup, can't you see? Your psychotic mother manufactured this entire—" "Her birth certificate lists Veronica Blackwell as her mother," Thomas said quietly, holding it up. "Born March 15, 2017. Abandoned at Boston Fire Station 12 on September 22, 2017. 6 months old. The wedding guests were no longer whispering, they were recording, texting, posting. I could see Victoria's perfect wedding becoming a viral disaster in real time. Marcus looked at his bride, really looked at her, maybe for the first time, and whatever he saw there made him take a step back. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Who are you really?" Victoria's eyes swept across the ballroom. 200 witnesses, dozens of cameras, exits blocked by security who no longer seemed sure who they should be removing. I watched her calculate odds she couldn't beat. And then finally, the mask shattered completely. "You want to know who I really am?" Victoria's voice transformed into something I'd never heard before. Raw, venomous, stripped of every honeyed pretense. "I'm someone smart enough to see an opportunity when it walks into my life." The ballroom went silent. Even the ice in the champagne bucket seemed to stop melting. Marcus stood frozen, still holding the bank statements showing his emptied accounts. "Victoria, what are you—" "Oh, stop it, Marcus." She laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. "You were so pathetically easy. The grieving son, still crying over his dead daddy, desperate for someone to tell him he was special." She kicked off her heels, standing in stockings on the marble floor, her wedding gown suddenly looking like a costume she was ready to shed. "Do you know how boring you are? How exhausting it was to pretend I cared about your stupid coding stories and your mediocre ambitions?" The guests were recording everything now, phones raised like weapons. Victoria's mother had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The bridesmaids had scattered to the edges of the room. 2 years, Victoria continued, her voice rising with each word. 2 years of playing the supportive girlfriend, laughing at your jokes, pretending your pathetic mother didn't make me want to scream every time she looked at me with those judging eyes. She spun toward me and her face was twisted with genuine hatred. "You knew, didn't you? From the beginning, you saw right through me." "I saw enough," I said quietly. "Well, congratulations, Margaret." She spat my name like poison. "You've ruined everything, again. Just like you've been trying to do since the day we met. Couldn't stand seeing your precious baby boy happy with someone who didn't worship the ground you walked on." Marcus finally found his voice. "You stole from me. You have a daughter you abandoned." "That brat?" Victoria gestured dismissively toward Emma, who pressed closer to Thomas. "She was a mistake, a burden I didn't ask for. Just like you would have been, Marcus, if I'd been stupid enough to let you get me pregnant." The cruelty in her voice made several guests gasp audibly. Jennifer, the maid of honor, was crying. Marcus's best man had his arm around him, like he was physically holding him up. "The shares," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "You were going to take everything." "I already took everything, you idiot." Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Did you really think I needed your permission to access those accounts? You handed over your password 6 months ago when I said I wanted to help organize our finances. God, you made it so easy." She pulled the veil from her hair, letting it fall to the floor like a surrender flag she was done pretending to carry. "And the best part? You defended me. Every time your mother tried to warn you, every time she saw through my act, you chose me. You actually told her you'd cut her out of your life for me." Marcus's face crumbled. He looked at me across the ballroom, and I saw the boy I'd raised breaking through the man Victoria had tried to reshape. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. Victoria followed his gaze and sneered. "How touching. The prodigal son returns to Mommy. Well, you deserve each other. A washed-up grocery store manager and her mediocre son, playing happy family in your pathetic little house." "That's enough," Thomas said firmly, stepping forward. "There are federal warrants for your arrest, Veronica. The police are already on their way." For the first time, real fear flickered across Victoria's face. She looked toward the exits, but hotel security had positioned themselves at every door, no longer confused about who the threat was. "You called the cops." She backed away, her eyes wild. "You can't prove anything. Those accounts were joint. I had every right." "You forged signatures," I said, pulling out the documents Thomas and I had compiled. "You created shell corporations to hide assets. You're wanted in 3 states for fraud and embezzlement. And you abandoned a child." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Victoria's composure shattered completely. She grabbed her phone from the head table, her hands shaking, makeup running in black streaks down her face. "This isn't over. I have lawyers. You have nothing," Marcus said, and his voice had turned to stone. "Security, please escort her somewhere away from my guests until the police arrive." Two security guards moved toward Victoria. She tried to run, but her wedding dress caught under her feet, and she went down hard, the sound of ripping silk echoing through the ballroom. As they lifted her up, she screamed at Marcus. "You're nothing without me. You'll always be nothing but a mama's boy playing at success." The guards led her away, still screaming, still threatening, her white dress dragging across the marble like a trail of broken promises. The ballroom stood in shocked silence until the doors closed behind her. Then Marcus turned to me, his face streaked with tears, and said the words I'd been waiting months to hear. "Mom, I'm so sorry. You were right about everything." 6 months after the wedding that never was, I found Marcus in my kitchen teaching Emma how to make his father's famous pancakes, the ones David used to flip too high just to make him laugh. "Like this, Uncle Marcus?" Emma asked, her small hands gripping the spatula with fierce concentration. "Perfect," Marcus said, steadying her hands with his. "Now flip it fast, just like Grandpa David used to." The pancakes sailed through the air and landed perfectly in the pan. Emma's squeal of delight filled my kitchen with a sound I'd thought I'd lost forever, the sound of family. Thomas had moved to town 3 months ago, taking a teaching position at the local high school. Emma stayed with me on weekends while he worked on his coaching commitments, and somehow this broken group of strangers had become something like whole. "Mom, can you pass the syrup?" Marcus asked, and the casual way he said it, like we'd never been fractured, like he'd never chosen Victoria over me, made my throat tight. We'd had long conversations in those first weeks after the wedding disaster. Marcus sitting at the same kitchen table, head in his hands, asking, "How did I not see it?" over and over until I finally told him the truth. "Because you loved her, and love makes us blind to things we don't want to see." The annulment had been swift. Victoria's real identity and existing marriage to Thomas made the whole ceremony legally void. Marcus's lawyer managed to freeze the transferred assets before Victoria could access them, though recovering everything was still working through the courts. Victoria herself was in a county jail in Massachusetts, awaiting trial on multiple fraud charges spanning 3 states. The evidence Thomas and I had compiled, combined with testimony from her 17 other victims, meant she was looking at serious prison time. Marcus had thrown himself into therapy, working through the betrayal, the manipulation, the realization that 2 years of his life had been built on lies. He'd lost weight at first, stopped sleeping, but slowly, with time and support, he was coming back to himself. "Breakfast is ready," Emma announced proudly, carrying a plate of slightly misshapen pancakes to the table. We sat together, me, Marcus, Emma, and Thomas, who just arrived with fresh orange juice, and for a moment I felt David's presence so strongly I almost turned to look for him. He would have loved this, I thought, this strange, beautiful second chance at family. The mail slot clinked, breaking the moment. Marcus went to get it, returning with the usual bills and junk mail. Then his face changed. "Mom, there's a letter for you, from the county detention center." My stomach dropped. The return address showed Victoria's inmate number in stark black print. Thomas reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to read it." But I did. I needed to see if she'd learned anything, if 6 months of consequences had changed her at all. Inside was a single page, Victoria's handwriting still elegant despite the lined prison paper. "Margaret, I know you think you've won, but we both know Marcus will never be truly happy without me. He's weak, just like his father probably was. You've trapped him back in your mediocre life, but eventually he'll remember what I gave him. Ambition, sophistication, a future beyond that pathetic house. When I get out of here, and I will, Marcus will realize his mistake. He'll come back to me, and you'll be alone again, just like you've been since David died. Some women are meant to be abandoned. Rot in your small life, V." The letter shook in my hands, not from fear, but from fury at her audacity. Still manipulating, still trying to plant seeds of doubt, even from behind bars. Marcus gently took it from me, read it, and without a word walked to the fireplace and dropped it into the flames. "She's wrong," he said simply, watching the paper curl and blacken. "About all of it." Emma climbed into my lap, sticky with syrup, and asked, "Grandma Margaret, can we make cookies later?" Grandma Margaret. She'd started calling me that last month, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence when she realized I wasn't going anywhere. Absolutely, sweetheart, I said, holding her close while Victoria's poison turned to ash. Some victories aren't loud or dramatic. They're quiet mornings with pancakes and second chances, built from the rubble of what almost destroyed you. Looking back now, I realize the hardest part wasn't crashing the wedding or exposing Victoria's lies. It was accepting that protecting someone you love sometimes means breaking their heart first. People ask me if I have regrets, if I wish I'd handled things differently, maybe pulled Marcus aside privately instead of creating such a public spectacle. The answer is no. Victoria was too good, too practiced at manipulation. A private conversation would have given her time to spin new lies, to paint me as the jealous mother who couldn't let go. She needed to be exposed in a way she couldn't deny, couldn't twist, couldn't escape. But I understand why it's complicated. Because when you love someone, truly love them, watching them suffer is agony, even when that suffering leads to freedom. Marcus is healing. It's slow, sometimes painful, but he's becoming himself again. The man Victoria tried to reshape into someone unrecognizable is finding his way back. He calls me every Sunday at 7 p.m. again, and sometimes we don't talk about anything important. Just the weather, his work, what Emma said that made us laugh. Those ordinary conversations feel like miracles. Thomas and Emma have become part of our family in ways I never expected. Broken people finding each other and building something new from the pieces. That's what healing looks like. Victoria is still in jail, still writing manipulative letters that go straight into the fire. Her trial is set for next month, and I'll be there to testify. Not for revenge, but for the 17 couples she stole from. For Emma, who deserves to know her mother faced consequences, and for the next potential victim who won't exist because she's behind bars. Here's what I learned through all of this. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes, when stories don't quite add up, pay attention. Those feelings exist for a reason, and if you're watching this, wondering if you're seeing red flags in someone your child loves, someone your sibling trusts, someone your friend is marrying, I want you to ask yourself this question. If you saw your child being deceived by someone they loved, how far would you go to protect them? Would you risk being called controlling, jealous, paranoid? Would you endure being cut out of their life temporarily to save them from permanent damage? Would you be willing to be the villain in their story until they could see the truth? Because sometimes love isn't gentle. Sometimes it's fierce and uncomfortable and requires you to stand alone against someone everyone else adores. I chose to fight. I chose to investigate, to show up uninvited, to expose the truth in the most painful way possible. And yes, I almost lost my son in the process. But silence, comfortable, peaceful silence, would have cost him everything. So I'm asking you, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me your story. Have you ever had to protect someone from a person they loved? Or maybe you were the one who needed protecting and didn't see it until too late. I read every comment, and your stories matter. If this story resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for truth, even when it's hard, is always worth it. And remember, love sometimes means revealing hard truths that others want to hide. It means being strong enough to be misunderstood, hated even, until the person you're protecting can finally see clearly. My son sees clearly now. And every Sunday at 7 p.m. when my phone rings and I hear his voice, I know that every difficult moment was worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. God bless you, and may you always have the courage to protect the people you love, no matter the cost. Until next time, stay strong, trust your instincts, and never apologize for protecting your family.